Hello everyone, I'm going to present an article called Monitoring Affective Trajectories During Complex Learning. An article made by three researchers, which are Sidney D. Mello from the Department of Computer Science in the University of Memphis, Roger S. Taylor from the Institute for Intelligent Systems in the University of Memphis, and Arthur Grazer from the Department of Psychology in the University of Memphis. I chose this article because it's very related to my project's topic, which is the emotion effects in the process of learning. Now, according to the article, there is very important information related to this. First of all, according to Mandler et al., there is empirical evidence that psychology literature that emotions are systematically influenced by the knowledge and goals of the learner. So, what this means that usually in the campus of psychology, they observe that how the information they are like studying is very related with what they feel. For example, there are some specific emotions that can influence your experience related to the subject or the topics, but also there are some other emotions that are called transition emotions that are not that important in the role of the process of learning. For example, according to Edman and Friesen, anger, fear, sadness, joy, disgust, and surprise do not play a significant role in this process. But there are other elements as the context, the amount of change, and where important goals are blocked. For example, in this case, many people is not able to do any class face to face or in a presential way. Maybe this is blocking many goals in their learning experience. Now, to take this more deeply, the researchers use the Russell's core affect framework. This framework talks about how depending the emotion the student is experiencing, they are going to have a different effect or a different result. And this is based on two different elements. First of all, balance, which refers to the pleasure or displeasure this emotion have in the student, and the arousal, that is basically the activation or how often this emotion happens in the student. The topic of the emotions and the learning process is more as a critical phenomenon that many people is trying to research and to observe to predict some behaviors, and we as teacher be able to prevent them. Now, very relate to the framework of before, we had the cognitive disequilibrium and also the cognitive equilibrium. Now, according to Piaget, the cognitive disequilibrium occurs when learners confront contradictions, anomalous events, obstacles to goals, salient contrast, perturbations, surprises, or any equivalent alternative. This means anything that prevents the student to make something. It can be mental, physical. For example, the pandemic is a physical obstacle, and the emotions sometimes can be mental obstacles. Now, let's say that the cognitive disequilibrium can be be measured in order to understand it. Now, as the article says, individuals in a state of cognition disequilibrium had a high likelihood of activating conscious and informed cognitive deliberation, questions, and inquiry that are directed to restore cognitive equilibrium and result in learning gains. In short, when a student is experiencing a cognitive disequilibrium, the Natural way to recover the equilibrium is to make questions. And in this case, the teacher may come as an agent to help the student to do those questions. Now, according to Corelli and Picard, the affected states of confusion and frustration are likely to occur during the cognitive equilibrium, while affected states such as boredom and flow will typically occur during the cognitive equilibrium. The cognitive equilibrium is the natural state when a person is experiencing something, and this usually aims to be more neutral or positive. This is the case of boredom and flow. But the disequilibrium is more related with confusion and frustration. Let's say that frustration is the most negative state, and confusion and boredom are very similar. Now, let's talk about the negative emotions that are related with the cognitive disequilibrium. First of all, the boredom. According to Craig et al., the affective state of boredom is negatively correlated with learning gains. Why happen this? Because usually when a student is bored, it can be by two different situations. Maybe the student knows a lot and he doesn't know what to do, or maybe the student doesn't understand anything and he doesn't know what to do. At the end, the result is the same. So that's why the article says that usually the students in this state are likely to fall in a vicious cycle that prevents them from actually engaging in the constructive learning process. Now, frustration. Frustration is like more dangerous to the student. And in the case of frustration, when the student feels like block, has a mental block, the only way to say that the student for that emotional state is to use the empathy. For us as teacher, to use the empathy means that we have to understand that the student to know what happens and what is his context and his background. Because if we don't, maybe this student can be like lost in the class and let you know that the frustration can be like a kind of illness because this student can make other students feel frustrated at the same time. Now, confusion. Similar to be bored, but with some different advantages. According to the article, confusion is a kind of positive emotion. Not always, but sometimes it is, because confusion forces the student to think about why they are confused, what is happening. So this helps to make questions, to relearn what is already learned. The students try to notice where he is wrong. And as the article says, this helps the learner to identify and discard a misconception or fills a significant gap in understanding. Basically, to find himself again and notice where is the hole, why he is not understanding. Now, I'm going to talk about emotions related to the cognitive equilibrium. Let's say that even they are positive emotions, they are not that significant to the student because a student learns more from its mistakes than its success. And this is the case of the emotional surprise. Surprise tends to be the more ephemeral emotion of all the emotions presented in this article because it can appear from just a single moment and then disappear. However, surprise is a neutral emotion because depending on the context of the surprise, it can be negative or positive. For that reason, in the Russell Course framework of the emotions, it is considered a neutral emotion. Also, we have delight. Delight refers to the pleasure, to what the student likes the most, and how this kind of pleasure can be explored for the student to have a positive output. Also, we had flow. Flow is an emotion that refers when the student is totally focused. According to Mihai, flow is when your whole being is involved and you're using your skills to the utmost. This is like the maximum point where the student is working related with the topics that are presented in the class. Let's say that flow has a particular phenomenon that it falls in a virtuous cycle that is full of delight and surprise for the student, helping in a positive way to the learning process. From the article, I can take some conclusions. Conclusions related to the emotions and its effects, and also other elements that can play a role in the learning process. First of all, emotions have some specific effects that the student can, in some cases, overcome. Also, there are some other external elements to the student that can affect him. This is the case of the topic, the question, the number of attempts made by the student, the tutor assessment, the understanding and the progress, the feedback provided by the teacher. These are external elements that can influence what the student is doing and what the student is understanding at all. Not also emotions are that important, but also external elements can play a significant role that determines how the student is going to face a specific topic or a specific class. Thank you everyone for your attention. I give you the reference from the article. Take care.